Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a book that I read, and although it is quite hot in the state of California at this very moment, I want to talk about a book that left me feeling cold. It's a book about princesses and royal weddings. You might be catching on to what I'm talking about. It is Royal Wedding by Meg Cabot, which was published in 2015. For those who don't know, and if you've been following this channel for some time, you know a little bit about Meg Cabot. But for those who don't, Meg Cabot is a writer who's been writing for the past, I'd say about 25 years. She's been writing both young adult fiction and more adult fiction under a pen name. Having written like the Avalon series, as well as the Princess Diaries series, and also getting some of her work turned into movies. She's received some acclaim for her work, although if you have been watching this channel for some time, you know that I'm not quite a fan of her work. I did enjoy the first Princess Diaries book. I thought it was pretty good, and in high school, I might have enjoyed it a lot more. High school Mr. Nothing certainly enjoyed books that had substance to them, but the rest of the books in this series are just, it really feels like Meg Cabot isn't trying that hard, or she doesn't have the skills to make up for her poor writing or whatnot. And so, as a result, I just didn't like the series. And I thought I was done talking about the Princess Diaries series after the last book, but I decided to talk about this final installment in the series so far, excluding the spin-offs that she's written, which I might get to later, and talk about this one, which, spoiler, I did not enjoy this as well. So without further ado, let's talk about Royal Wedding. I will do a little bit of a summary analysis, and we will move on from there. So Royal Wedding primarily focuses, of course, on Mia Thermopolis, who we've met in the previous installments in the series. Some time has passed since the events of the last book, about 6 years or so. Mia is still with Michael. She's running a tutoring center, which is named in honor of her late stepfather, who died of a heart attack. And her father is currently running once again for Prime Minister of Genovia, against another family member, Ivan Rinaldi, who is described as a sort of corrupt businessman sort, who is anti-immigration and is just everyone acknowledges is probably would be a bad leader for Genovia, which is very interesting because this came out like a couple days before Donald Trump announced his presidency in 2015. So Meg Cabot wasn't really picking up on any person in particular, but I guess she was just picking up on the anti-immigration sentiment of the time. But I just find that aspect very fascinating. And all of this is putting a lot of stress on Mia because she feels like she has a lot of commitments to make up. The paparazzi is obsessed with Mia, and she's not doing so well with that. And so Michael suggests that they go on a vacation to the Bahamas, which Mia agrees to, and they have a wonderful time. While they're there, Michael proposes to Mia, and Mia is a little bit hesitant at first just because it would mean a great sacrifice for Michael because he'd have to give up so much and live in Genovia with her. And Mia she's a person of great feelings, so she doesn't want Michael to give up all that. But Michael asserts that he's ready for this, and so she accepts his proposal. And when they return back to America, back to New York City, Mia finds out that her grandmother has basically told the press. And the reason for this is because the grandma wanted to distract from the news that Mia has a half-sister named Olivia Grace, who is black and lives in New Jersey. Her mother, Olivia Grace's mother, died some time ago, and Prince Philip, Mia's father, has been sending money to the aunt and uncle of Olivia Grace, who have been raising her in his stead, although they haven't been very supportive or loving of her, and Mia is alarmed by all this because she wants to meet this half sister, but everyone's kind of warning her that doing so will expose her and like make it known that she's a princess and whatnot, and the media is going to kind of treat her harshly because, as Grandma notes, Olivia Grace might be biracial, but the press is only going to see her as black, which is another interesting point of this story, and kind of like it's around the same time that Meghan Markle was getting like big in the media, and it kind of foreshadows how the media was going to, you know, address and treat her. But I do find that aspect fascinating, that Meg Cabot is so aware of those sorts of things. Despite all the warnings, Mia decides that she's going to go visit Olivia and visits her at school, where she discovers that Olivia is kind of bullied by certain people. And in the process, everyone kind of finds out that Mia and Olivia are related, and the press has another field day with this. And while Mia's dealing with that, she learns that she is pregnant with twins, which is a big deal to her. And although she's kind of worried about what kind of parent she'll be, she eventually is happy about it with Michael, because she knows that she has a great support system and someone who she loves, who will be an excellent father. Meanwhile, Philip announces that he's dropping out of the race for the prime minister election. Ivan's also been disqualified because he has some business interests that are tied to the election, and he would stand a profit off of that. And so the Rinaldis basically force him out of the election. And he also abdicates the throne in the process, which means Mia is set to rise to become Queen of Genovia, which again she's a bit worried about, but she's ready to accept because again she does have Michael by her side. Although the news of Mia like getting married and gonna have children kind of alarms Grandmère in this story, but Mia seems to not really care what she's upset about. And then meanwhile, still JP, who Mia was dating at the sometime in the original last couple books in this series, JP shows back up and is harassing Mia, and is also revealed to be her stalker, who was sending her kind of unkind and death-ready kind of notes. And it's implied that Michael beats up JP and gets him sent to a prison farm of sorts. It's a bit unclear and also kind of worrying, but I did think it was kind of funny that just glossed over and also accepted by Meg Cabot. And then as the story ends, Michael and Mia are relaxing before their wedding reception a month later, and Mia notes that she's pretty happy. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, boy howdy, this one is a stinker, but that's not going to be enough to really tell you why I don't like it. So allow me to go into a little more depth about all the reasons I don't like this book. There are a couple of reasons that I do, and I'll get to those, but mostly this book is bad and awful. One thing that that Meg Cabot tries to touch upon is Mia's growing responsibilities in the story. This is greater than high school, because Mia had some responsibilities in high school, but she was still a kid and everyone recognized that. But now she's an adult and she has adult responsibilities. So she has her wedding that she has to plan. She's running the tutorial center and thinking about expanding. She has to do some benefit dinners. She's helping her father with the election. Her list is ever growing, and people are telling her, you don't have to do all of this. Like, you can take it easy here and there. Nobody's gonna fault you for that. But Mia kind of feels like she has to do this. She has to prove herself in some sort of way or something. I'm kind of reaching there just because Meg Cabot doesn't go into great detail about why Mia. I think that's just who she is. She's a very kind person and she cares, and so she's not gonna only give half of herself. She's gonna give all of herself, even though that's a bit unhealthy for her. And while it would be great if Meg Cabot focused on this and carried it through the entire story, and reached a point where Mia was like, okay, I'm going to take some time for myself. I don't have to assume all of this. The thread is kind of abandoned. Mia never really tells anyone, like, I don't want to do this or that or this or that. She never really stands up for her grandmother, which she doesn't do throughout the entire series. You think there's going to be some point where Mia says, like, Grandma, like, I can't stand you trying to dictate and control my life. I don't want you to do that. Like, I am a grown-up now. I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. And she does that in kind of a way, but it's not strictly said to Grandma. And, like, I feel like there needs to be that confrontation in this series. Otherwise, it's just Mia being pushed around. She's never standing up for herself, and everything is just happening to her rather than her really making decisions in her life. And, yeah, so Meg Cabot kind of just abandons the thread and just gives Mia more to do. And it feels kind of like pointless to be talking about all this responsibility if it's not really going to go anywhere. And so I thought that was like a very weak element of this story. And then another interesting element, or what could have been interesting, is Mia's relationship with Olivia. I personally think this should have been like its own entire book. Like, you have a book about the royal wedding, you have a book about Mia finding out about Olivia, and you have a book about Mia having children. All of those things are worth spending an entire book on, but for some reason Meg Cabot decides to throw it all at the wall right now and see what sticks. And I do think Mia and Olivia's relationship is initially interesting. Like, Meg Cabot does some pretty decent writing here, but she doesn't really go into too much detail about the nature of this relationship, and I do think that a lot of it has to do with wanting to avoid the mishaps of her own youth. Like, when she found out that she was a princess, like, she kind of took some missteps here and there, and she had some difficulties with her friend that she doesn't want Olivia to have either. Like, it's described that there's a sort of blonde-haired girl creating trouble for Olivia, and I think Mia sees her relationship with Lana, although it's improved over the years, it wasn't always, and she doesn't want that to happen for Olivia either. She wants to be there for her sister, whereas maybe there wasn't someone there for her beyond Lily and Tina, who, shout out to, like, Meg Cabot for making Tina such a wonderful character. Like, even though she fails here and there, like, Tina's a wonderfully written character, and I just need to say that. And yeah, so, like, I feel like that's a very good element, like that, and that's wonderful. But Cabot kind of glosses over the writing of Olivia and Mia's relationship. Like, she gives it no time to breathe, and she just presents it and then moves on. One of the worst parts is that this could have been an opportunity for, like, Meg Cabot to write about how Olivia may not want to leave her family. And so she's torn between her sister, who she just met, and her aunt and uncle who have been raising her. But rather than get into that conflict, Meg Cabot just writes it off and says, nope, the aunt and uncle were emotionally abusive towards Olivia, and Olivia didn't want to be there. And it's like indicative of a long or sort of persistent problem with Meg Cabot's writing. She doesn't want to engage in any sort of conflict that would make her story more interesting or force her to confront complex ideas. She just wants it to be simple and non-engaging, non-complicated for any of her readers, which I think she largely, like, insults the intelligence of readers by doing that. By just solving everything as quickly as possible. You don't allow for yourself, especially, to engage in any of the drama, or for your readers to question or, be presented with any questions, to, think about what they're reading. It's just empty calorie, vanilla ice cream, which, vanilla is good, so that might be actually a bad comparison there. And that's not to say there aren't any good elements of this story. Like Meg Cabot does touch on some social justice themes, which aren't like a major part of the story, but I do think it adds to Mia's character as a whole. Like, it's Mia is pro-immigration, which is great at a time when Europe was and still is dealing with immigration issues and anti-immigrant sentiment. She's described as having brought gay marriage to or marriage equality to Genovia, which is pretty significant in and of itself. She's very an outspoken feminist, really talking about, like, incels and just stalker men and people who aren't worth her time like that, and, like, the idea of JP as someone who couldn't get over his like misplaced love for her, and is actively trying to use her to make himself more famous at the cost of Mia's dignity sometimes, is a very interesting like theme or like idea to deal with. And so I do think I got to give Meg Cabot like credit for being consistent with this social justice stuff, and like not capitalizing on the bandwagon after Trump like came into focus, because this comes out like before that. So Meg Cabot was speaking out about this like even before Trump announced his presidency. And I'll also like commend her on her use of humor here, which I think is pretty funny throughout the book. One thing that made me laugh in particular is Mia's like talking about how like in addition to the usual wackos, like the misogynist and anti-royalist who constantly harass her family, they're also acquiring some new white supremacists because of Olivia, and anti-Semites because of her marriage to Michael. And Michael notes, "Oh well, at least I'm glad I could have brought something to this family, even if it is racist." And I thought that was a little bit funny there. There's other moments like that in the story that I think, don't outright make this just a horrible story because they add something of substance to it. But again, like this is all bogged down by just the worst kind of writing that you could see. Like it's retreading old plot lines, like stuff that was presumably solved in the last volume of the series is just brought up again, and it's just like these are consistent problems, and it's like I thought you solved this, Meg Cabot. And I know like these problems can arise again, even Mia is still young, but for her to be dealing with these problems over and over and over, it seems like there's no growth for her. And I even said that in previous installments, where it's like, where is Mia's growth? Where is her character development? If you're going to have her work on this in one volume, and then in like 2 books later, you're going to have her work on it again. Like it really seems like Meg Cabot is going back to the well over and over and over, and doesn't have any like consistent idea on who Mia is or how she's progressing through her life. And then another issue is the bad and horrible pacing of this story. Just the god-awful pacing, where Meg Cabot somehow doesn't let anything in this story breathe. In this story, Mia gets married, or not gets married, but she deals with the wedding, but then gets married at the end. She finds out that she has a half-sister, and she also finds out that she's pregnant. Very few of these ideas are allowed to breathe. In fact, like, and even when they are allowed to breathe, even a tiny bit, like, Meg Cabot seemingly forgets it, or takes way too long to address it. It takes 250 pages for Meg Cabot to get to Wedding Planet itself. In a book called Royal Wedding, it takes 250 pages for her to get to that idea, for her to get to anything about wedding planning. And I think that's an atrocity right there. That is just inexcusable, because, like, you called this Royal Wedding. Like, if it was called anything else, I could tolerate maybe waiting 250 pages to kickstart the plot or make anything of substance happen. But no, she instead chooses to wait, and then she just speeds through everything. I don't know why. Like, she could have given any of these stories their like plenty of time to breathe, made the story longer if it added value, or just made these their own separate stories. Because she's done that before. Like, it took 3 books for Mia to make it through her freshman year of high school. So why doesn't she do the same here? And I think maybe one of the reasons is because the publisher is tired of Meg Cabot. Like this is the last book that she gets, and she doesn't get to write any more about Mia Thermopolis, presumably. Although she does have like other books about Olivia, so I don't know what the deal is there. Maybe she was just in a rush to get to Olivia so she could write a book about her, which makes this even more inexcusable because it's just an excuse to create a new character to write about. And then another problem is that this feels like bad fan fiction, where Olivia is introduced, but she's introduced in a way where it's like, is Olivia one of Meg Cabot's friends? Is Olivia did Olivia write this book, where it's like, oh, surprise, we're introducing this character of Olivia, and she's Mia's best friend, and Mia and her friends love her, and she is just absolutely wonderful. There's nothing kind of bad presented about Olivia. And so it does come off a little bit as a bit fictiony, especially this late in the series. Like, if Meg Cabot had wanted to do this, why not do it early in the series or something like that? Like, that would have been pretty good. But this late in the series, it just seems like, again, she's throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then the last question that I have to ask is, who is this for? Like, what is the intended audience of this book? Is it for teenagers? Is it for the young adult crowd? Because if it's intended for teenagers, then like Meg Cabot has to really explain why she put so much sex in this book. Like, it seems like like every 20 pages or so, Mia and Michael are talking about sex and how much they love to have sex, which isn't a problem. We should talk about sex, but Meg Cabot writes about it as though she's just learning about it, or she wants everybody to know that she's cool like that. She's okay with talking about sex, which is weird, and it doesn't really feel like this is for teenagers. In any sort of way. And it's certainly not for the teenagers who once loved the Princess Diaries series, because they've all aged out and presumably found books of more substance. I don't see why they would ever return to this series, especially in the gap between when the last book and this book was published. Is it for adults? I don't really see, again, I don't see the adults who read the other books really returning to this after reading other things of substance. And I don't really see adults just jumping into this book if Meg Cabot were to just capitalize on the royal wedding trend, because again, this is an established series. Why would you start right here rather than the first book in the series? I think maybe Meg Cabot thinks people are going to do that, but I would definitely not recommend doing that, because by the time I got to the 5th book, if I was reading this for fun, I would have just dropped out. I would have never made it through the entire series. So again, the question is, who is this for? Who is Meg Cabot's intended audience? I don't think she really knows, or maybe she doesn't even care and she's just writing this just to make any amount of money. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Meg Cabot's Royal Wedding, the final book in the Princess Diaries series. Hopefully. I honestly hope she doesn't write another one, because I'm just going to have to read that and I'm going to hate it, because Meg Cabot hates her readers. She hates challenging her readers. She hates writing anything that's complex. She hates anything that would challenge the existing world that she has. It's kind of bizarre how avoidant conflict she is, because anytime conflict comes up, she solves it almost immediately, and I don't know why. I've never met another author who does that to the extent that Meg Cabot does. It's pretty weird. If you read this book before, or you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. Let's have a discussion, I guess, about a royal wedding. By the way, I'm not going to recommend this to anyone out there, just because one, you're not going to read the last book in the series without having read the other ones, and I honestly just can't recommend that you read the other ones. Maybe read the first book, and then you got a good idea of the rest of the series. The first book is pretty good, as I've said before, but this one is awful for so many reasons. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this book and never read it. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and royal travels. Farewell.